call this meeting of the Audit Committee to order. We begin first with public comments. If anybody has any comments about anything on the agenda, they are free to speak. No, observe no comments made. Approval of the minutes of the previous meeting. Do I have a motion to approve them?
I move to approve. Second,
I have
we can-
a
second, we can
second,
just,
but I got a question.
yeah, you have the same question I do, go
Go
ahead.
ahead.
There, on page 1, and next to the last paragraph, in the middle of the paragraph, it says, "A single audit was not required in 2018." I didn't understand that statement.
That has to deal with the federal FEMA reimbursements. If we received, I believe it's $750,000.
$750 now, yeah.
In federal rearrangements,
Okay.
there's a separate single audit required
Okay,
for that. We
okay.
did not reach that threshold.
Yeah, but just reading the sentence, there wasn't a context there.
As I recall, and Jay can probably confirm, when you do that, you don't need to have the control section.
Okay.
Is that right, that you don't have to report the control section if you have a single audit?
The controls, yeah, you have to, there's a control section.
Is it required?
There's a separate letter that goes, if you have to do a single audit. That's required, if you spend more than $500,000 in state funds or $750,000 in federal funds. Keys in a single audit, there's an additional report. We have a letter on internal controls in the back, but there will be an additional single audit letter if that was to kick in. But last year it did not, and so far this year we determined that single audit's not necessary.
That wasn't required, okay.
Okay, when I was reading single is like one.
Yeah, it's just.
We don't even need a single audit.
We don't
Any other questions?
Well, I don't know if it's a question, I don't know if it's appropriate, but the motion is on the second to last page that Woody and I were to create a checklist, milestone list to be completed, a timeline, and us monitoring those activities, I guess, is that clear enough who us is? I mean, we were discussing that, whether, I assume that
That's the
motion
audit
came
committee.
right out of what was made. You know, it's one of those. The only thing would be if we wanted to clarify that, but if that's what it said, then I don't think we could change it.
I think it's probably okay.
Okay?
Okay. No further discussion? Those in favor of the
good.
motion? Those in favor of the motion?
Aye.
Aye. Motion passes 3-0. Discussion of the 2019 audit kickoff meeting with the audit partner and town manager. David, do you want to comment on that, or
I mean, you were there.
I was there, but,
Yeah, how about if I try?
yeah, go ahead, because it's just I just want to summarize for them
Yeah,
what
we-
went on.
We met on the 27th, I believe, Mr. Fleshauer, Mr. Sharp, Mr. Fletcher, and myself, basically to kick off the audit season. And I believe that the calendar, the draft calendar that we came up with in order to meet our 31 October deadline, if you will, is actually reflected in the item of number 5, which is the audit process. That meeting served to provide some insight as to what the auditor had proposed, some timelines that were not in keeping with the town's desire to make sure that we get the audit in on time. So we worked through that, and I believe have an agreed upon process reflected in 5 that we can have some assurance we're gonna be able to meet. And I know that Mr. Sharp is here and will speak to actual progress to date on that, so.
So just for the audit committee, what happened this year that should happen each year is when the audit is ready to begin and the auditor comes on site, the town manager, the auditor, and 2 members of the audit committee will sit with them and just understand what the proposal is, make sure everybody understands it, and if those 2 attending see an issue, they would reflect it back to the committee and then on to the board. but that was fairly straightforward. The one thing I will remind, though, in that meeting, we had a proposed calendar from the auditor, and both the town manager and the audit committee members asked, can we accelerate that proposed list to finish by the November the 1st date? The auditor reminded us he gets an automatic extension of 30 days without issue. Our past history suggested to us we would really appreciate, we paid a good fee for this one, so we would ask the auditor to accelerate as much as possible and get ours done by November the 1st, which means it needs to get done in time for the board, the audit committee to have reviewed and the board to have approved in order to get the LGC by November the 1st. Anything else on that particular item?
So this letter you gave us, is this what went into the meeting? I mean, what is the final?
That was in the meeting.
Okay.
We are here to propose if we have anything
Oh,
different and to
Number
alert.
5, we're
You
gonna
have
work it
another
out.
copy of that?
Got it.
Yes, do you have a copy? Yeah.
Okay.
You have a copy of that,
Yep.
yeah. We would, for what, just to advise the audit committee of what our job is. So the auditor will commit to a schedule, and our job is just to follow up with both either the auditor or the town manager that these things are being done. And if we see a thing, we take exception and we find out why and report it back to the board.
Okay.
That things aren't going the way they were proposed to be in the first audit meeting.
That's right.
And
And that report to the board is an email from you, or?
it would be from the chair of the audit committee.
Okay.
Right now, it'd be me for another couple of months, unless I get fired before then. We got members out there that might take exception, so, but whoever the audit chair is would take that back to the board at the next meeting, hopefully. Okay? Number 4, directions from the BOC regarding communication of audit committee business. After the last audit committee meeting, we had a board meeting, and between our audit committee meeting and the board meeting, correspondence went out of a full distribution to the board members, and there were a couple of different ones that went out. The board has told me to share with the audit committee, they want any communication that comes out of the audit committee to come through the chair to the board. No sending of mailings out to all the members individually. If we have something we need the board to know about, then they should give it to the chair, which we'll give to the board.
I agree.
If it's a crisis, the board member can call a special meeting to get it, or we can have the town clerk distribute something. But we don't, because of the need for openness, we don't start sending mails out to everybody with our own views on something. If it's audit committee, it goes through the chair to the board.
I agree.
Number 5 is agree a process for monitoring the year-end audit. At our last meeting, and I had a draft of what I recalled as being sort of the schedule that we thought we would use. It's the last page in the handout for us. But both of you had taken on the role of thinking through this as well. And I have to ask how much of what I put out is acceptable or not acceptable, or reflect what the audit committee feels is what our role would be in monitoring. We have to monitor the process. We don't have inputs to it, we monitor it. And this schedule was for that. So do you have something that differently?
I'll start, Woody, you can chip in.
Go ahead.
No, we are consistent with what you put out. The issue is like everything due on October 31st, and it seems like it'd be nice to have stuff ahead of that, so it's not like the deadline for everything. So I think between these, I mean, what we've got is, trial balance handed over from the town to the auditor. Auditor does the field work. And then, management discussion and analysis, the draft audit, the compliance, a response to the compliance, management representation letter, and then the approvals and submittal. So to me, those are the milestones. I don't know if there's anything else in there that we need to track to. We're good with, trial balance doing the field work, but then everything else is like October 31st. And it seems like we ought to, I think it can be done in parallel, but it's like, I think it'd be good to have some other interim deadlines that say, in order to hit the October 31st, these are the sequence. And And I think it relates to when can things start, so, like management discussion and analysis, when can that actually start? Management representation letter, when can that start? If you get some of that stuff done ahead of time, then we're not up against the deadline.
Yeah, I think that if we follow what Mr. Sharp put into his schedule of events, and if we can back it up 11 days and say we're done by November the 1st, those dates all easily fall within this. And our job is not to give any inputs, it's just to, if it's not done by that date. And I think our job might be that if we see that it's not gonna be done on time for whatever reason, then we have to alert the board.
I agree.
And we follow through with the town manager, the finance director, and the auditor to find out, because we don't want to run into November the 1st and find out on that date that things aren't happening.
Right.
As soon as we see that the schedule slipped, either through the finance director, town manager, or the auditor, then we've got to get the word to the board that something has slipped and we might not make it.
Right.
So no surprises. My view is just no surprises to the board.
That's right.
We fair enough with that?
Well, fair, learning from last time, it appeared to me that the management discussion analysis was kind of the issue that held up things. So to avoid that going forward, I think we need to figure out when we can start it and when we need to have it done and kind of bookend it so that we don't run into that same problem that we ran into.
The finance
in the
director
spring.
can't start the MD&A until he gets the draft of the audit.
Okay.
So if he gets the audit, then he can begin that.
And that would be the 30, when is that?
Oh, that's
9
around the 1st of October?
9 October?
It was, but, so if we're looking at 9, now,
Okay,
just viewing experience we just had, the town has normally, as often happens, asked the auditor to do that for them, and they did it in the past. Things are tightening in the LGC and the whole scheme, and so that's not gonna happen in the future. This time, the finance manager hired somebody outside to do it for them,
Well, we've hired them to
Well, you hired-
assist in the
Well,
development
to help-
of.
to help get it done. It takes the inputs, it is,
Right, you
it's
still
the
have to have-
MD&A.
You still have to have.
It's the manager's views,
Yeah,
and this person would help put it in the format that's acceptable.
that's right.
If we had any struggles this time, which we did, I don't think we'd have them next time. But our job would be to watch and get feedback, and the finance director would let the chair know, okay, we've got the MD&A done and been submitted, and as long as that's okay, we're clean and we don't have anything to report, except the next board meeting, I would tell the board, we're on track, we got this, we got this, we got this.
Yep.
And I think there's only 5 or 6 steps in the process that, if we've done that, then we're gonna be okay making the November the 1st.
all right, so what I'm hearing is the draft audit be done by October 9th, and then the MDA can start on the 9th or the 10th, and then the MDA would need to be done when to have the audit?
Probably a week later.
Yeah, I mean, our target date right now is for the financial draft to be October 9th.
Okay,
The MD&A, I mean, technically you can start anytime, because, I mean, the only thing you need is the current year numbers. You still have to put in the prior year numbers, so that can be updated, and any analysis, additional analysis you want to add to the MDA can already be started. Once you receive the draft, you can drop in the final numbers. So, the report, to get done by October 31st, I'd like to have that, at least a week in advance to that date. We have to drop it in our report and make sure it's, clear out any issues we have with our work papers or any ongoing unanswered questions. So I'd like to give at least a week, before issuing it to complete the LGC, to have the MDA and have the complete draft assembled.
so that'd be the 24th of October, 1 week ahead of the
Yes.
31st? Okay.
Jay, has the template by the LGC been finalized yet for the MD&A? I know they were updating it this year. There really weren't supposed to be that many changes to it, but there is an update to the template.
Yeah, they're supposed to be updating. We got an email from them last week that they're still working on it. They gave us the disclosures we need for the notes related to some debt disclosures that I looked at last night, and there was no major changes. But I don't anticipate any major changes because there was new major standards put in place. So I'm using the prior year template to assemble the financial statements when we start that process. And MDA, it's the same. I don't anticipate any major changes to the MDA analysis. Hopefully, they were supposed to have that by this Friday.
Yeah.
So I'm checking it daily to make sure it's been updated.
I do want to pile on to that discussion on the development of the MD&A. Historically, traditionally, statewide, the MD&A is a bare bones, just enough to satisfy the requirement. And in talking to Jay, I think we're missing an opportunity from management anyway to highlight the town's operations and some of the future, it's kind of a look back, but also a look forward. So I don't want to miss an opportunity to illuminate large-scale important things going forward. We have the budget message that says early on, what we've kind of done or looking forward to, but I think that from management's perspective, that there's an opportunity here to add more than just doing enough to get by. So
I've written them for years now, and what I see on the other side as well is when I get it, I hope to get the senior executive's view on, okay, how do we get here? And what do I see coming, a little bit of a forecast on what the events are, what's going on that might temper it. And that can be written long before you get the audit results, and you just plug in some numbers after that.
I'm thinking about it. I think that's what I'm trying
Could
to do.
start it
Because
early.
some of that is philosophical and, adding perspective from a chief executive role.
But that's the title, it's discussion and analysis. So his analysis, the finance director's analysis
Right.
of what this all means to the community, the
Yes, sir.
taxpayers. So I hope
That's
we
a
could start it.
realization.
Yeah, and we
on
can start
my
that
part.
early, and Lithia can help get that done or whatever to get it done beforehand. And then when it's just time to plug in, if you come to the 9th, we could within a week have the MD&A ready for you.
Right.
So you think you can do it in a week after the 9th?
If you've done the majority of it up front, which means we've got a lead time now, a little bit of time.
Yeah, and then, some of our discussions here during this field work that's been taking place, just some of the general discussion, specific questions, have initiated some thoughts or notes on my part that, okay, this is a perfect item to address in the MD&A, so it has value. We're gonna do a better job on MD&A.
The other one I had on the list here that's kind of tied together is the compliance section, which might raise some items that would require a management response. So it seems like the compliance section's got to be at least drafted to know if there's issues to be raised, and then management can respond and get it in writing. So I wasn't sure timing on those two. Is the compliance section part of the draft audit? When you say it's all gonna be done on the 9th, then that would include the compliance section?
Are you regarding to the findings? If there's potential
Yes,
findings?
yes.
Yeah, as soon as field work is wrapped up and I'm able to review everything, we will initiate the discussions if there are any findings at that point. And they'll be included on the draft on the 9th.
Okay,
But I will alert David ahead of time if we have any compliance issues we're gonna bring up in the report. So he's aware of them at that point and can, begin to think about drafting responses to those. We had a preliminary discussion. We had 2 findings last year. Right now, we would keep those 2 findings. Where we're at right now, the material weakness would be reduced to significant deficiency. We still got some field work to do to determine if that's gonna be the case, but where we are right now, it would be reduced. We're still working through some stuff with the accrual process to determine if it's gonna remain a material weakness or go down to a significant deficiency. But as of lunchtime today, we did not have material adjustments to cause a material weakness to remain. But like I said, we still got some field work to do, so we do not know exactly what the findings will be
Okay.
at this
but
point.
in either case, there would need to be a management response, even to a significant
Yes, that's
deficiency,
correct.
there's a response, so.
Yes, that's correct.
So, and I'm just fixated on these dates, so would that follow the same timeline as the MDA? That'd be like the 24th to have the responses?
That would be, yes. I'd
And
like it a week in
you will
advance.
be able to get him the issues that will need a response by the 9th?
Yes,
Okay.
that is the plan in place right now.
Okay. And then, The
Representation.
management representation letter, yeah, is that just can be done at any time, or is that, there's something in there that needs to be,
That has to be dated the same date as the date of the report.
okay?
So that will be sent with the draft, along with the adjusting journal entries to be reviewed. So, yeah, that gets sent with the audit report draft, because they have to be the same date.
Okay, but it's just sign it, I mean, it's not like the MD&A that you need some input to,
It has to be signed and put on town letterhead. We cannot issue we can send the report to the LGC, but we cannot issue the report without that signed management rep letter.
okay. And
Which
that
is-
would be then the 24th as well, or is that the last minute, 31st, or what's?
I mean, I'd technically like to have it before I give it to the LGC,
Mhm.
but we can give it to the LGC without it. I just cannot issue the audit. If the LGC comes back a week later and says, hey, the audit looks great, it's approved, I can't issue the audit to the town until I receive that signed management rep letter.
Okay, so 10/31 or earlier?
I would prefer at least by 10/31 the day. I'd prefer it before I issue it to the LGC. Is what I
Okay,
would prefer
so
it
the
to.
29th, 30th, or?
The
24th?
24th would be
Okay.
great. And I said, if we plan on issuing about 31st to LGC, the 31st is fine, but I'd prefer having it before I gave it to the LGC. So let's just say 24th,
Okay.
along with everything else.
And where do you stand with regard to the board having approved the audit, or the audit committee having approved the audit?
That is up to the board, that's up to the town.
So it's
You
not a
know,
requirement?
That's up to y'all's internal requirements. Every town we work with has a different requirement, so it's completely up to y'all. When we can issue the statements, you have to let us know how you want to proceed with the approval process, whether I can get it from the finance director or has to be from the board. I said every town we work with has a different approval process, so you just let me know what you want that to be and what the town agrees on, and we'll follow that.
Well, I mean, you know, we've already had our September Board of Commissioners meeting. I assume that the October one is October 15th,
15th, yeah.
and then it's gonna be due before the next one, so I think 15th probably too early from what we're talking about.
is. It
Mhm.
is.
Would there be a special meeting then to approve it before you submit it, or is it okay? Do we still hit the deadline if you submit it and they approve it in the November meeting?
Yeah, that's fine. We submit plenty of them to the LGC before we get approval from the town. Like I said, that's not issuing the audit, that's given to the LGC for their review. We will not issue the audit until the LGC reviews and approves, and if the town, if the board has to approve the audit, we will wait to issue until they've reviewed it.
So there's no deadline there that we're just concerned with the getting it to the LGC by
By
November
the
1st?
31st, yes.
Okay.
And does the representation letter reflect that the board has approved the process also, or Is it
We've
speaking
seen
for
it
the
both
board?
ways. We've seen it where just the finance officer signs it, we've seen it where a finance officer and a representative of the board signs it. It's
Or the
complete-
mayor?
That's the board's call, the town's call, on who they want to sign that. We have to have at least one signature. We prefer to, but it's up to the town how they want to proceed with that. We've seen it both ways.
I would take this issue on the 15th board meeting and ask the board what they want in terms of their role. But back to the audit committee, I would ask that the meeting where you discuss the findings and the responses involve a couple of members of the audit committee sitting in and just being able to know that, what to take back to the board and to understand what the responses are, as it's, the board is the one who hired the auditor. So I don't know if that's an issue with the finance director, that, if you can't get to the whole board, if we can't schedule a quick special meeting, at least have two of us show up when you're discussing that with the town, what the findings were, and the town back what the responses are. That way I can take it to the board before that audit is actually issued. So if the board had an issue, then it could respond.
Okay?
Is that okay?
I mean, if we're all done on the 24th, and we've got till the 31st, another week, then somewhere in that time period, yeah, the audit committee ought to meet.
And I can find out if the board would be willing to let the audit chair's conclusion that everything looks okay be sufficient, then the board could, at the
Well,
next meeting,
yeah.
do their approval of it.
I mean, I know we got into like a catch-22 this time around. It's like, here's the final audit. Well, it's not final because we haven't approved it. You know, it went around in circles.
Yeah,
Well, apparently
LGC.
yes.
So if that's the case, then I guess my preference is to have a special board meeting before the 31st, so they do approve it before it even gets submitted.
But if it doesn't require approval, then it'll be up to the board as to what the board wants to do. If they want it,
It's up to the board.
then we'll work
Okay.
that out.
If
And
the-
they'll work
But
out.
I
with
do
the-
think it would be good for the audit committee to see it,
Yes.
so we can make a recommendation to the board.
Right.
But to his point, we're mostly worried about getting it to LGC by October 31st.
For November the 1st, right?
Yes,
It's October.
October 31st.
Okay. So in effect, we're saying that the auditor's schedule is good with the exception of moving November the 11th back to November the 1st or October 31st.
Yeah,
We will, especially after the agreement we had in the meeting with the finance director, that we would expect, or we're pushing for, we're hoping for a November the 1st submission, meaning October the 31st, we wrapped it all up.
Yeah, I would, our timeline is to submit it to the LGC on October 31st or by that date.
Okay. Okay. Number 6 is a briefing by the audit partner on the progress to date on the 19 audit. If you can share, if you will, how it's gone so far, which in effect says how much are you on track, and identify any issues that you've crossed that could become serious issues, or you're working on them.
Yes.
Confirmation the town has done what it was supposed to do in this time frame, and that you guys have done what you're supposed to do in this time frame.
Yes, so obviously, auditors are in another room. We're down here this week for field work. We're progressing. We're in good shape. I'm not gonna say we're in great shape. I'm not gonna say we're in bad shape. We're in good shape. So we are on track to have everything complete, have a draft today to manage by October 9th and to submit by October 31st. When I say in good shape, or if we have a huge snag, that will throw the track off. But right now, we are on track to make all the deadlines that the town has requested. Field work has gone good. We're working through some issues right now, finishing up field work this afternoon. The issues we're encountering right now are mostly the accrual process, the payables, the receivables. The town did books more than they did last year. The auditors are working closely with Margaret to come up with the other balances to make sure they're properly accrued right now. And so that's the main thing we have left open right now. We got a few small things, and we've touched every area of the audit. And I think we're wrapping up a lot of the areas right now, but it's the accounts payable, accruals, and the receivables that we're finalizing right now. One of the auditors who lives in Wilmington probably will come back down next week for a day and to go back through any open items so we can complete field work. But we are on track right now to complete the audit on a given timeline that the town requested.
Okay, the 2018 audit had 2 findings and 2 actions to be taken by the town. And at our meeting, and kind of backtrack you a little bit, at our meeting we had the other day, the town manager was asked a question and easily misinterpreted. And I'm not even sure, because that member's not here right now. The audit report said that the town has hired somebody to keep track of everything and to help the town get the financials and to keep the financials on the accrual basis. One of the members that was with me there asked the question, who was that? And the town manager said in that meeting, I haven't hired anybody and I might not. I think maybe what the question was is, have you hired a finance director? And no, and we don't plan to do that. That's not in the game yet. But we had already, obviously we knew that Lithia Brooks had been hired to help. And one of her items was to help the town with the finances and keep them on track, do closings into quarter, into month, and that sort of thing. So that was probably a bad answer, but a bad question maybe, so that you know that that part is not in question, I don't think, in terms of did the town do what it said it was gonna do. The other one was that they were at the time keeping the books per GASB 34 on the full accrual basis for 2 funds and on the modified for the other. Any issues with that? Any questions in whether or not the books were in fact being kept June 15th or whatever, on the full accrual for the 2 and modified accrual for the others?
Yeah, that's the issue we're working through right now, is to determine that took place. We're still working with town finance department to go over some of those receivable and accrual balances. There were a number of them that were the same as last year. So we're going through those and make sure that those are not materially incorrect and that there's no adjustments needed for those. That's why I said, before, the material weakness may go away, may not go away. We haven't determined that yet because we've made a few adjustments, but we have not made material adjustments to those accounts yet. We're still working through those. That's our major open item right now, is to work some of their accrual accounts to make sure that they're properly stated.
So what I think I'm hearing is this, the two items from last year are probably gonna repeat. One may go down from material to significant deficiency,
Yes, that's correct.
but the other two will stay.
Well, the one,
One was a significant deficiency, I may have, I don't have them in front of me, but one was, just keeping the books, I think.
one was, and
And one was, the material weakness was related to the magnitude of the adjustments and.
but if the town has hired an outside expertise to help the staff keep the books according to GASB 34, the fact that the town may not have a doctorate in accounting on staff is not an issue, right? Would it still be an issue that the town doesn't have on staff the expertise, if it's hired the expertise?
Yeah, isn't it, yes.
Then it's not an issue, right?
Issue, yeah.
So the town doesn't have to have a CPA or anything else on staff, as long as it's got the expertise available to it and is using it.
Exactly.
So we would not have this.
Yeah. no,
The
is it-
expertise one can go away if we hire the right person to keep the town, to help the town stay abreast of it and to keep the books, close it out.
Either that or, improve the process. I know Margaret's done a good job of asking a lot of questions to our staff to, moving forward, how she wants to improve the process on some of these accruals and how can she do that. She's inquired a lot with them during field work to do that. And, we've indicated, hey, if you have questions during the year, feel free, that's part of our fees, and ask us questions during the year, you're not gonna get charged
Okay.
extra for that. So I feel like there's effort to get better in that process. And so, if they can improve on that process, that finding would go away.
So if the town adopts the fact that it's gonna follow GASB 34, even though LGC didn't get its hair in a fizzle over the last year when we didn't do it, we'd probably be clean of that finding.
Or it has to adopt and implement it.
Yeah.
You
Well,
can
I-
adopt a lot of things, but you have to implement
Yeah,
it.
right,
That's correct, yes.
Okay, because isn't, and maybe this is moving ahead too much, but we're one quarter into 2020 right now, and this is the year that the yellow book changed. I mean, you cannot develop the financial reports next year like you're doing now. Is that correct, or am I?
There's a few go-arounds. I said the town can either prepare the financials themselves, hire somebody outside to do it, or somebody in our firm can do it, they just cannot be involved in the audit. That makes it quite inefficient, because if somebody's not involved in the audit, there's not a lot of, they don't know the details of the numbers. But somebody at the firm could prepare the financial statements. They just cannot, they can't be down here doing the field work, they can't be reviewing the audit, they can't be involved in the audit at all. We, as a firm, may be looking to hire somebody that their only job is to prepare financial statements. Might be a boring job, but that's a good job, because we have a few people we've worked with in the past that are coming to retirement age. They prepared their financials for the governments they work for years, and they're gonna look to supplement their retirement income. So we've been having some initial discussions with them to come on board with the firm part-time and prepare financial statements. So there's some workarounds, but, obviously, the better ability the town has of preparing its own financial statements, the better. Because I feel the yellow book at one point, GASB at some point is gonna say auditors can't prepare financial statements at all. It's coming down the line, whether it's in 5 years or 10 years, I don't know, but they keep on getting tighter and tighter on rules. But for next year.
That's a
we can-
discussion for another day.
Yeah, I
It
didn't, the only question would be if any of that gets addressed, because here's where we stand for this year, here's the issues, and oh, by the way, it's all right this year, but it won't be all right next year, kind of thing, and I don't know if you.
What we are doing this year, this fall, while we're doing all the government audits, is really doing an analysis of each entity individually. Of course, the question is, do we get hired by those governments next year? So, we're thinking long-term, but we're not thinking too detailed, because it's, we
Yeah.
waste of time if we come up with all that analysis and, they have to go off of bed and, we're not doing their audit next year. But I've asked all staff to look at each entity as we're doing the audits this fall to determine, how it's gonna apply for yellow books next year. We're going to have a discussion with each entity, probably early winter, once all the audit season, government audit season's over with, probably January timeframe, and say, hey, this is, the new rules, this is where it applies to y'all, how we think needs to be done, whether it's finding somebody in-house to prepare it, hiring a consultant, or we can continue preparing it, but we just have
So is that a discussion you're planning to have with us? in January?
As of right now, I mean, you know, I said, we're doing the 2019 audit. I would assume after this is done, you would let us know whether we're doing the 2020 audit, but we'll have that discussion anyways preliminarily, just to, you know, just be prepared for the 2020 audits.
But that's a discussion that's gotta be tempered with, implementing guidance from the local government commission too, you know.
Okay, okay,
And, we'll make sure that we share that.
okay.
Okay,
One other
question?
question, I guess, kind of related to all that, because the whole discussion about whether to retain you for now was very much price-driven.
Sure.
And you bid bid billing rates, but then a not-to-exceed cap.
Yes.
So I understand I'm not asking for any kind of commitment, but where are we now in terms of bumping on the low end versus bumping up against the cap based on what you've seen so far?
So far, I would say we're in that arena, and I don't think we're on the high end right now. Like I said, we're still getting through this accrual process. I'm not sure much longer it's gonna take. Jessica might have to come back down one day next week to finish that up. I say, I don't, at this point, think we're gonna have to incur additional costs like we did last year. We'll be within the not-to-exceed amount at this point. I can't be too detailed, because we're still,
Yep.
I gotta review it and determine, you know, if there's any additional work to be done. Like I said, the town's gotten its stuff, we're in good shape. The important thing is that, you know, the quicker we get the audit done by October 31st deadline, the more efficient we are anyways, and we're not lingering around for months. So, if we continue on this track, I think we're gonna be somewhere in the middle.
Okay, and when will you be more comfortable that you're in good shape with,
I'm
Just-
hoping next Friday. I'm
Okay.
giving the town's finance department next Friday a drop dead deadline to get us everything we need that's significant to the audit work papers. So I'm gonna start my review process, because some of the areas are being finished up today. But I'll know better once I complete my review of the file, determine if we need any additional work. But I'm hoping to have that done next week.
okay, so if you come across something that's gonna bump it up and need more, we should hear from you in a week or two.
Yeah, you know, right now, I don't see any additional work from what I proposed on. We're hoping to keep the costs as low as possible, but that's going to be determined on this AP, AR balances we're having to dig into a little bit more.
Any question?
It's not on the agenda.
Then we can't add it.
Okay.
It's a
It's
special
a
Well,
special meeting.
you-
Special
Well,
meeting, you
it's
cannot
special
add to the
meeting,
special meeting.
I'm-
That's not, Finance Director?
I'm good.
Okay, yeah, motion to adjourn?
So moved?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.